Music is a demanding industry to get into. It's competitive, and making a career from it may seem impossible to reach for many. Black, Indigenous, and people of color in the live music industry face the typical challenges while dealing with racism and discrimination. The Closing the Gap research study by the Canadian Live Music Association was undertaken to examine these barriers that impede the participation of BIPOC folk. We have the project consultant to tell us more about it.
Nicole My name is Nicole Auger. I'm Métis with ancestral ties to the Haudenosaunee and Niska nations, and I also have French settler ancestry. 6 generations of my family have lived as grateful uninvited visitors on Lekwungen territory, which is otherwise known as Victoria, BC. And I've been grateful to be living and working in Takaranto for the past 5 years on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Chippewa, and the Wendat peoples. And I'm actually in neither of those places right now, and I'm out in BC visiting my family this month. So I'm super grateful to join you from the beautiful traditional territory of the Subaset Nation, and that's in Lake Cowichan, BC.
Today we're going to be talking a little bit about your involvement with Closing the Gap as a consultant there. You're also with the International Indigenous Music Summit. What can you tell me a little bit about that organization?
Yeah, amazing. So I work as the manager of programming and community engagement at the International Indigenous Music Summit. And that organization, it's a unique gathering of artists, knowledge keepers, community builders, and allies. And we work to amplify and empower Indigenous artists and industry through the event, through ceremony, connection, inspiration, and dialogue. And it's typically an annual event that takes place over 5 days, and it brings together Indigenous artists and music industry through showcasing and relationship building, as well as panels and ceremony. This year, we're doing something a little bit different, and that's due to many reasons related to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, and also just recognizing how immensely difficult the last few years have been. Now more than ever, our communities need to gather together, to heal, and to dream together. And so what we've just started doing, and we actually just did our very first event this past weekend in Cache Creek, BC, is we've been visiting community across Northern Turtle Islands through a series of one-day sort of like mini summits. And so we're collaborating with regional partners really to shine a spotlight on the amazing local Indigenous talent in different areas and just create opportunities for our community to gather together and share stories and challenges and successes and what our hopes are for the future. So the next few will be heading out to Prismatic Festival in Halifax in September, and then we'll be hosting another mini summit in November with Mondial Montreal.
And your involvement here directly ties into the Closing the Gap study as well. Mm-hmm. So I was there for the live stream when it was announced. What was your involvement in that project? Like, as a consultant, what does that all entail on a project like this?
I joined the Canadian Live Music Association at a very interesting time. I joined in June 2020. So we were just 3 months into the pandemic at that time, and I had just finished up I did a combined MBA and Master of Arts in Music, and had a very strong research interest. Advocacy and live music were all passions, so it seemed like a really great fit. But entering the industry at a time when, as we all know, it was largely dark. Folks had been earning little to no revenue since March, and lots of folks were leaving the industry permanently to go find employment in other sectors. So this was all happening at a time, when a lot of conversations were starting to surface after the death of George Floyd, and industries were starting to look internally and examine and start to reflect upon what work needed to be done. So I began sort of just having lots of conversations and doing a lot of listening with, artists, industry workers, different organizations across the country, and just hearing what needed to happen, and where gaps were. And sorry, just to take a step back, in case folks aren't aware, the Canadian Live Music Association is a not-for-profit industry trade association, and it's really the voice of Canada's live music industry. So the association represents all the people behind live music. So not artists directly, but everyone who's part of that live music ecology. So venues, arenas, concert promoters, festivals, agents, performing arts centers, associations, as well as suppliers to the sector. So when we were having these conversations, until this study was developed, very little research at all existed on the nature of inequalities in Canada's live music industry. So what we continually were hearing throughout these conversations was how much and how urgent the need was to have sector-specific data and statistics and narrative to highlight the nature of inequitable experiences in the live music community that vary along lines of race and ethnicity.
It's such a struggle, like when we're looking at all industries right now, trying to find the specific data for each there is almost impossible. Like it's not being done.
Yeah, definitely. And there have been some really great strides, and we've been working very closely with, organizations like Advance, Canada's Black Music Business Collective has been doing incredible work in this area, breaking down racial barriers, these research reports. And what's more important is the action that's starting to come after the development of these studies and the conversations like this that continue, this forward momentum. That's what's so important about this work. And it's really exciting to sort of see this body of research growing.
When the data was coming out for this Closing the Gap study, and we're seeing the different information about these inequalities and the challenges that many BIPOC and Indigenous live music workers are facing, it's things that I knew were going on, but actually seeing the statistics about it is pretty eye-opening. So what were some of the things that maybe stood out to you as this study was being put together?
For a bit of context, the study was conducted nationwide. So there were quantitative elements. So we had a survey that went out in English and French across the country. This was open to anyone who identified as a person who was part of the live music community. And then we also conducted 40 interviews with live music workers in a variety of role, from artists, festival programmers, venue owners, managers, etc., who identified as either Indigenous, Black, or people of color. And what we found, across the board from both the survey and the interviews, we can see within the report that BIPOC workers are underrepresented overall in the live music sector, and that's no surprise. But also that BIPOC live music workers are disproportionately represented as artists rather than entrepreneurs and owners or live music workers. So what we can take from that is that BIPOC artists may often have less opportunity to connect with people in these crucial behind the scenes roles that might be able to, relate to their genre of music and experiences. A huge one, and again, none of this is surprising, but it's really staggering when you can see the data on paper. Lack of representation was cited as the most significant barrier to survey respondents' sense of belonging in the industry. So when we think about, our live music ecology, and that's again including, all of our venue owners, our promoters, agents, granting bodies who are making funding decisions, and all of the folks who are sitting in decision-making roles around the table, right down to the staff we see and interact with in live music spaces, from technicians to security and door staff. This is what it comes down to, and representation goes beyond physically inviting diverse folks into spaces and adding a diverse stage to your lineup, but really, it means reflecting the diversity of Canada's population within all roles across the industry, and decolonizing our hiring and funding processes. We really need to be looking looking internally at our own processes to create real shifts that will create safer workspaces, and begin to promote, more actionable changes within our industry.
Canada is going to continue to become more and more diverse. When we're looking at the data, the amount of immigrants that are represented in the Canada population as a whole is continuing to grow. And by 2036, immigrants would represent between 24 to 30% of Canada's population. Very cool, very exciting, the amount of multiculturalism here. And yes, we need that represented in our music. I think in the study it was talking about like the struggles of getting some huge artists out here, like Bollywood musician, not Bollywood, but like musicians from India, getting like K-pop artists out here. It can be a challenge sometimes.
There's so much beautiful, diverse talent in this country. But as the data shows, it's so much of our diversity is reflected in our artists who are making such, incredible contributions to our live music community. But we need to, in order for all of these perspectives and diverse ways of creating and seeing the world, we need to have that holistic perspective where we're seeing, diverse voices, not just in artists, but throughout the entire industry who are supporting the artist.
We have this awareness now. We have data on what's going on. What are our steps forward? How can we continue to make the industry more inclusive for everyone?
Yeah, what a huge question. Well, I'd say first, go read the report, please, everyone. It was an 18-month process that we went through, and our project team, worked with a substantial advisory committee. We had so many community partners participate in this, and the recommendations came from all of those conversations, as well as from the survey and interview participants. And the recommendations provide both high level industry recommendations, but also tangible things that folks can implement into their organizations today. So we direct the recommendations towards sort of three main audiences. So we have the live music industry and presenters, we have government and funding bodies recommendations. And then we also included some community-centered ideas that were inspired by the study's findings. And these are for BIPOC workers to, help self-advocate and support each other and create a sense of agency as they continue to grow their careers. And, we note in the study, it is not the role of BIPOC workers to change workplace culture, but at the same time recognize that change is going to be slow. And so in the meantime, these are some things that our participants had noted themselves that had helped to empower their careers as they were continuing to progress. So I don't want to, they're so broad, but I would say some of the themes that we discuss within the recommendations are very much centered around how do we address gatekeeping issues. So this is things like promoting transparency when you're in positions of power, creating more career development opportunities and skills building opportunities, increasing access to industry knowledge, addressing eligibility requirements and restrictions, and decolonizing funding processes. Like all of these are big themes, but things that lots of folks are already starting to work towards, but we need more action to be taken.
It can come down to our communities as well. Like every community and city has its own unique and amazing music scene. So if you're going out to see some musicians play at your local bar or at local venues, like go see them, go see these talented and individuals of diverse backgrounds. Because if we go to there and we're showing that there's a desire and an interest. So through the process, you probably spoke to dozens and dozens and dozens of amazing individuals in the industry. Is there any artists that you're like, wow, their music's really good and they kind of stood out to you and now you're listening to them a lot? Any recommendations for people out there?
Yeah. Oh man, there are so many. And what you know what I would like to share actually is a few venues in Toronto that I love to go to. I think they're doing a phenomenal job in presenting just an incredible array of diverse music. So rather than picking a couple of my favorite artists, I would feel really bad for leaving the ones out. Lula Lounge in Toronto is incredible. Small World Music Center has been doing phenomenal work. Poetry Jazz just opened up a new venue in downtown Toronto that is doing some really, really incredible stuff. And one of my favorites that I cannot forget is Drome Taberna as well. So all of these venues are doing just amazing work, and there's so many others, but definitely really doing the good work to promote and present a lot of really beautiful, diverse artists.
People are in Toronto, make sure you go and check it out. So Nicole, thank you so much for taking this time to talk about this amazing study. Is there anything that you'd like to share that from the study that stood out to you, and where can people go to, find this study and find out more about it?
Amazing. Yeah. Well, and miigwech for having me today. It's really been a pleasure to chat. And I'm just excited about folks continuing to learn more about the study and read it, please. It's a dense report, but one beautiful thing is that we took the time to put together a condensed executive summary. It's very digestible.
I really appreciate that. I read through that. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And it just gives you a taste of some of the broader themes. And I will say, it doesn't cover everything in the report. So as you have time, take the time to go read it. And I also do want to just say that, this report is not a one-stop shop, and it is not a quick fix to addressing racism in the live music industry. It's a step in the direction for, creating some tangible strategies that folks can really harness to start to promote industry shifts. But there's so much more work to be done. And at the end of the report, we actually address some areas that, we feel could be really excellent future areas of research as well. So if you'd like to read the report, it's at canadianlivemusic.ca/closing the gap. So please check it out. And I'm happy to follow up, leave my email address with you, and I'm happy to answer anyone's questions anytime.
Have a story you'd like us to share, or communities we should highlight? Leave a comment on our social media or reach out to us on our website. I'm Ryan Funk. This was You Talk, and have yourself a good one.